This tutorial is for a cable cast on. It is a different kind of cast on than a long tail cast on, which is honestly what I use in about 95% of the projects that I do, but it can be very handy if you're wanting to cast on a long number of stitches, or if you are just wanting a sturdier edge. I think it makes a nice sturdy edge for my knitting than a long tail cast on or even a knitted cast on. So you're going to want to start with just a tail long enough for weaving in at the end of your project, and we're going to begin with a slip knot. Now you can do this on straight needles, circulars, double points, whatever your project or your preference calls for. But we'll put our slip knot onto our left needle, and in order to start this cast on, I like to hold on to the tail kind of with my fingers on my left hand as I'm doing this, just to give me some stability on this first stitch, because otherwise it tends to spin around a little bit. So with it secured, what we're going to do, this is very similar to a knitted cast on, only instead of going into the stitch for a knitted cast on, we're going behind the stitch. So I'm completely behind this stitch. I'm not going through it at all, just completely behind it. And this is why it's helpful to kind of hold on to this tail with your fingers to get this first stitch going, so that you have something to kind of anchor your needles. So we're going behind this stitch, and then to make our first cast on stitch, or our second since our slip knot counts as the first, we're going to take our yarn, our working yarn, we're going to wrap it clockwise around our right needle, just like we would be doing if we were making a knit stitch. And then we're going to pull that loop through, kind of behind our first stitch. If there had been another stitch here, we would be pulling it between the two stitches, but here we're just kind of pulling it around this stitch. And then we're going to let the stitch become loose so we can manipulate our needle tips the way we need to. And what we'll do is we'll take our left needle tip and we're going to hook this new stitch from right to left onto our left needle and then pull it down tight. So there's our first two stitches. Now to make the next subsequent stitches, now that we've got two stitches on here, instead of going behind the stitches, we're going between the stitches. So again, I'm not actually in either stitch. I am going between them, like so. So we go between our two stitches. We're going to wrap our yarn like we would a knit stitch, clockwise around our needle. We're going to hook that new stitch through between the two stitches. We're going to let it become a little loose, so we can then take our left needle, hook it on right to left, and pull it tight. Now, as you're doing this cast on, you might find getting between the stitches is a little difficult. And what I would recommend is, as you're doing this, when you wrap around, pull through, and then hook on the new stitch, before you cinch it all the way down, I would insert your needle between the two stitches while it's still loose, and then cinch your stitch down tight. This still makes a nice tight cast on that's not too tight, and it allows you to more easily get your needle in between these stitches. So stick it in, pull it tight then, and then proceed with casting on your next stitch. You always want to hook it on right to left onto your left needle. And that is how you do a cable cast on. And it's named that because you're casting on using the cable along the bottom of your knitting. We're twisting that around. And this makes a nice, firm, sturdy cast on edge. This last stitch that you cast on, whenever you get as many stitches as you need on your project, it's going to look twisted like this. That's the nature of how we're pulling the stitches through the stitch before between the two. But as you knit this first stitch, you see that it'll just kind of tuck it down into place where it should be. So don't worry if this first stitch looks a little twisted. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just the nature of how the yarn lays before you begin your first row.